public believes that the former President Trump, was better for the economy than the current president.
Well, you know.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen went on CNBC to assure everyone how great the Biden economy is. And, well, one follow-up question later, and it didn't sound so great. Take a look.
The public believes that the former President Trump, was better for the economy than the current president.
Well, I think President Biden understands that people are feeling pain. And when they say this, they are concerned. I think they've seen the level of prices rise quite a lot. I mean, over 20% over the last 3 years or so. They can remember when the price of a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread was 30% lower than it is now. And low-income families have seen some of the highest increase in costs.
Patrice, I kid you not, that was right after she had said that Americans are far better off now than they were under President Trump. So do you think the Trump campaign might end up using that as an ad?
Well, they should. Why not? It's so interesting that, you could tell that she's been coached. President Biden feels the pain of Americans who are struggling with these. This is a change in messaging for the Biden administration, because up until, I would say, late last year, everything was still honky-dory. Inflation at one point was either transitory, which is something that she had used, and then it became a problem for just the elites. Only the wealthy and well-connected had to deal with inflation. So, hey, at least they've heard from regular folks, and they've gotten the messaging cue that it's time to change the message and recognize that disproportionately lower income and working class families bear a greater weight of inflation because they're spending so much more of their discretionary income on things like gas and groceries compared to, frankly, the elites who can afford to pay $50 more at Whole Foods on top of their $500 bill.
Yeah.
And so, but again, I don't think she has a good answer for it. And she's been late to the game at the start of when inflation took off in March of 2021. And she's still late to the game right now and acknowledging that it is sticky. And at this point, I think we can call it stagflation.
Alfredo, she also tried to make the point that whatever inflation there is still lingering out there, it's really the fault of corporate greed, people trying to maximize the profit margin in areas where they don't have any competition. Is that going to work, this class warfare stuff?
No, I just don't think so. I mean, they're hoping that the average American is stupid, right? I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. They're not, right? I mean, they see and feel the pain every time they go to the grocery store, every time they go to the gas pumps, right? Like I said, every time they write those checks for, insurance, their mortgages, everything, right? They're maxed out on their credit cards. They've tapped out their entire savings account, right? So they know what they're feeling. So anything that they're saying from the White House at this point, from the administration, they know is just a bunch of malarkey, in the words of Biden. I have to say that he's still saying that he thinks Americans still have enough money to be able to live comfortably. I just saw him quote that. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. So even though, everybody's basically probably telling him at this point, just stop with the Bidenomics, he's still out there. I'm not sure if he actually fully understands what's happening around him. I mean, I just don't understand.
That's certainly an open question based on some of the other behaviors we saw from the president this week. We're not sure what he fully understands. But Chris, politically, Patrice pointed out, they're really stuck here. They can't say 4 more years, let's keep the good times rolling, we fixed everything, because people know exactly how bad it is when they go to the store, go to a restaurant, or go anywhere to spend any money. So how do you say we're doing great, and at the same time, I feel your pain?
Yeah, that's right. And Patrice mentioned how, they were really crowing how they had a handle on this early on. You'll remember that Janet Yellen famously dismissed this as transitory. That was the word. Everything was transitory. So there's your ad. All their chest thumping about this being a little blip, it's transitory. Cut to yesterday. Well, yeah, things are 30% higher and everybody feels it. It's amazing. David Axelrod has said now on 2 occasions, he said it again this week on CNN, While, yes, they have the perfunctory, obligatory threat to democracy and orange man bad stuff, he then came around to saying, we really need to knock that off. Charlemagne the God said something similar on The Daily Show this week. Democrats have to learn to start talking to real people. And David Axelrod said, if Democrats don't start learning how to talk kitchen table issues, it's very likely, he said, no one's talking about democracy around the kitchen table if they don't have food to put on it. That's pretty profound.
Yeah, it is. Alfredo, I'm curious, though, do you think that Republicans or President Trump, are they properly connecting the dots between the unbelievable spending choices that Democrats made the first 2 years in the Biden administration when Pelosi was Speaker and Schumer was running the Senate, and all of the insanity they did with the Green New Deal or the climate change agenda? What did they call it? The infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, which did are they properly pointing out, hey, this is why we're feeling this? Because I don't think people understand why inflation actually happens. It's completely government controlled, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they could always do a better job on that. I mean, I think that's one thing that as a party, I think Republicans could always do a better job in terms of their storytelling, the ability to connect hearts and minds with the average American, the average American consumer even, which is really the average American voter, in terms that they can understand, right? For example, even when we talk about inflation, like what actually is inflation, right? I don't think if you ask the average person, they would actually be able to tell you what inflation is. But if you tell them that, basically paying more and getting less is a definition of inflation, they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, then I know what inflation is, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they're going to use one tag, that would be it. Paying more, getting less. That's the definition of the Biden economy.
And Patrice, they also tried to float at the White House this messaging. They're not trying it anymore. But a couple of weeks ago, it was like, well, things are looking better because McDonald's is doing a cheaper value meal for people now. I don't think that's going to win them the election.
It didn't work because then people are sharing pictures of the $20 burger deal that McDonald's was charging for their signature burger. Frankly, we've seen fast food prices really rising pretty rapidly. I think conservatives have to be careful. We absolutely should spend time connecting the dots between massive federal spending, flooding the economy with money through monetary policy to pay for that fiscal policy of spending, and then how that elevated prices. Because I think the left, the Biden administration has said, well, that was because of COVID and disruptions in the supply chain. We've seen those ease. So what's the issue now? Then they said it was Putin. Well, we knew Putin invaded Ukraine in the start of 2022, but inflation had already crossed the 5-6% mark at that point. So what really was that driver? However, in 2022, the midterm elections, conservatives talked about inflation, and still that wasn't enough to reclaim the Senate and to expand the margin in the House. So there's still got to be a little bit of something. And I think it's that positive messaging of, okay, this is how we got here. This is whose policies got us here. But then here's what we can do to unwind the mistakes that have been made. And I think making that next step is going to be a critical part of communicating for success in November of this year.
We'll let that be the last word, but I got to thank you, Patrice, for reminding. I had totally forgotten about the Putin price hike. They actually tried to float that one for a while. This is the Putin price hike. Okay, guys, we believe you.